In the chilling dampness of February 1957 in Philadelphia, the desolate woods of Fox Chase concealed a secret that would haunt American law enforcement for over half a century. A young boy, battered and lifeless, was discovered discarded inside a cardboard box originally meant for a baby bassinet. He possessed no name, no history, and seemingly no family searching for him. How could a child simply vanish from society without a single soul stepping forward to claim him? The immediate reality of the discovery was grim. The cardboard container, stamped with the logo of J.C. Penney, lay partially hidden in the dense underbrush along Susquehanna Road. Inside, the victim had been wrapped carefully in a cheap, faded flannel blanket featuring a distinct pattern of faded diamonds and blocks. The careful placement contradicted the brutal reality of his condition, presenting a perplexing paradox to the first responding officers who secured the perimeter. According to official police reports from the era, the Philadelphia Police Department launched an unprecedented effort to identify the victim, immediately classifying him as a John Doe, a standard law enforcement term used for an unidentified male corpse. Investigators meticulously took his fingerprints and footprints, cross-referencing them against local and national databases. They hoped for a swift resolution, assuming a frantic parent would soon report a missing child matching his description. Yet the days stretched into weeks with agonizing silence. The physical examination of the boy revealed a harrowing narrative of neglect prior to his death. He was estimated to be between 4 and 6 years old, severely malnourished and bearing multiple small scars, some appearing to be surgical. His hair had been hastily and crudely shorn close to his scalp, with clumps still clinging to his body, suggesting a desperate attempt to conceal his identity shortly before or immediately after his demise. The profound tragedy of the unknown child deeply affected the investigators and the citizens of Philadelphia. He quickly became known as America's unknown child, his postmortem photograph distributed on hundreds of thousands of flyers, inserted into gas bills and plastered across shop windows nationwide. Hardened detectives, men who had witnessed the darkest corners of human nature, routinely paid out of their own pockets to ensure his grave was maintained, unable to shake the profound sorrow of a boy abandoned even in death. Attention naturally turned to the few tangible items left at the scene. The J.C. Penney bassinet box was traced back to a specific shipment delivered to a store in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, just months prior. The flannel blanket, cut in half, was analyzed for manufacturing origins and distinct wear patterns. Detectives scoured local neighborhoods, hoping someone would recognize the specific plaid design or remember purchasing the infant furniture that originally occupied the cardboard container. Despite these promising physical leads, the trail stubbornly evaporated. The mass-produced nature of both the box and the blanket rendered them nearly impossible to connect to a single household without a corresponding witness. Thousands of tips poured into the precinct, ranging from well-meaning observations of neighborhood children to bizarre, convoluted confessions. Each lead required meticulous vetting, draining departmental resources and consistently ending in frustrating dead ends that only deepened the overarching mystery. In the absence of definitive proof, theories proliferated regarding the boy's origins and his killer. One prominent hypothesis centered on a nearby foster home, suggesting the child was an undocumented resident who suffered a fatal accident or abuse, his body disposed of to avoid losing state funding. Another theory pointed toward a traveling carnival family that had recently passed through the region. However, exhaustive interrogations and searches failed to yield the concrete evidence necessary to elevate these suspicions beyond mere conjecture. The overwhelming silence of the community remained the most baffling aspect of the case. In a heavily populated urban environment, a child of that age should have had a footprint in the world. There should have been a neighbor who saw him play, a grocer who noticed him with a parent, or a doctor who treated his earlier ailments. The complete absence of such witnesses suggested a life lived in extreme isolation, raising chilling questions about the systemic failures that allowed him to remain utterly invisible. As years bled into decades, The initial urgency inevitably faded into a somber institutional memory. The original investigators retired, passing their meticulously compiled binders to a new generation of detectives who viewed the cold case with a mixture of reverence and frustration. The world changed drastically around the small, unmarked grave in Philadelphia, but the fundamental unknown remained a static, haunting fixture in the annals of American crime. By 1998, advancements in science offered a renewed glimmer of hope, prompting authorities to exhume the remains. The goal was to extract viable genetic material, utilizing techniques that were pure science fiction when the child was first discovered. However, the degradation of the remains after 40 years in the earth presented a monumental hurdle. The technology of the late 1990s, while groundbreaking, struggled to yield a comprehensive profile from the heavily compromised biological samples. Scientists were only able to extract a partial sequence of mitochondrial DNA, which is genetic material inherited exclusively from the mother, useful for tracing maternal lineage but often insufficient for pinpointing a specific individual without a direct comparison. This partial profile allowed investigators to rule out several families who had spent years wondering if the boy was their missing relative, but it fell agonizingly short of providing the child with his true name. Despite the scientific setbacks, a dedicated coalition of retired law enforcement officers and forensic professionals, notably the Vidocq Society, refused to let the case languish. They volunteered countless hours, applying fresh analytical perspectives to the aging files and financing continued testing. Their unwavering commitment ensured that the unknown child was never truly forgotten, acting as surrogate protectors for a boy who had been denied such fiercely loyal advocacy in his brief, tragic life. Recognizing that scientific capabilities were advancing at an exponential rate, authorities made the difficult decision to exhume the remains a second time in 2019. The objective was to secure a more robust sample capable of withstanding the rigors of modern, highly sensitive sequencing technologies. The exhumation was a delicate, solemn procedure, underscoring the relentless determination to extract the truth from the unforgiving grip of time and decay. The extracted material was subjected to genetic genealogy, a revolutionary investigative technique that combines advanced DNA sequencing with traditional genealogical research to identify individuals by tracing their biological relatives. By uploading the complex genetic profile to public databases, forensic genealogists can identify distant cousins, meticulously constructing extensive family trees backward through generations until they converge on a specific set of parents. This modern forensic approach required monumental patience and precision. Genealogists navigated complex webs of historical census records, birth certificates, and marriage licenses from the early 20th century. According to the lead genealogists involved, the search was complicated by the intricate, sprawling nature of the family lines in the Philadelphia area, requiring them to eliminate hundreds of potential branches to isolate the specific genetic intersection that could only belong to one child. After 2.5 years of painstaking historical and biological mapping, the disparate threads of data finally aligned. The intersection of maternal and paternal lineages pointed definitively to a single previously undocumented birth in the early 1950s. The process of cold case identification, seemingly impenetrable for 65 years, was suddenly illuminated by the undeniable clarity of modern science. On December 8, 2022, the Philadelphia Police Department stood before the public to deliver a historic announcement. The boy in the box was no longer America's unknown child. His name was Joseph Augustus Zarelli. Born on January 13, 1953, he was just 4 years old when his life was brutally extinguished. The revelation of his identity restored a profound measure of dignity to a child who had been stripped of everything. The emotional resonance of speaking Joseph's name for the first time in over 6 decades rippled through the community and the law enforcement agencies that had carried his memory. The headstone that had long borne the tragic moniker of an unknown boy was finally etched with his true identity, a permanent testament to the relentless pursuit of truth. Yet the profound relief of this discovery was immediately tempered by the grim reality of the next phase. Having solved the foundational mystery of who he was, authorities found themselves reigniting the search for his killer with renewed urgency. The identification answered the question of his name, but it glaringly highlighted the unresolved questions of why he suffered and by whom, who inflicted the fatal injuries, and what circumstances led to a 4-year-old boy being discarded in a bassinet box in the freezing woods. Navigating a homicide investigation that is 65 years old presents nearly insurmountable obstacles. The parents of Joseph Zarelli are deceased, as are the vast majority of individuals who might have had direct knowledge of his short life or the events leading to his death. The physical evidence from 1957 has been exhausted, meaning the path forward relies entirely on unearthing buried family secrets or finding a surviving witness who has carried a terrible burden for a lifetime. Investigators are now meticulously re-examining the original case files through the newly established lens of the Zarelli family tree. By understanding the specific household dynamics, the addresses where the family resided, and the extended network of relatives in West Philadelphia during the mid-1950s, detectives hope to contextualize the old clues. The proximity of the family's known residences to the location where the body was discovered is being heavily scrutinized for geographical profiling. The focus has shifted from a broad nationwide search to a microscopic examination of a specific domestic environment. Law enforcement must determine who had custody of Joseph at the time of his death, as his biological parents were not necessarily his primary caregivers in his final days. Unraveling the complex custody arrangements, potential adoptions, or informal fostering situations within the extended family is critical to identifying the individuals responsible for his welfare and ultimately his murder. Joseph's story stands as a powerful testament to the enduring power of forensic innovation and the unyielding dedication of those who refuse to let the victims of violence fade into obscurity. It bridges the gap between the rudimentary police work of the 1950s and the cutting-edge genetic science of today, proving that no case is truly beyond the reach of resolution as long as the scientific community continues to push the boundaries of what is possible. As the investigation into his murder moves forward, the shadow of justice still looms over the decades-long cold case. The boy in the box finally has his name, but the full truth of his tragic end remains locked in the past. Will the modern forensics that restored Joseph Augustus Zarelli's identity ultimately lead detectives to the person who placed him in that lonely cardboard box, or will the final chapter of his story remain forever unwritten?